What up boys, today we're going to be undertaking something a little bit different than usual. Clash of Ash recently did another interview with Seth from Supercell, and I love those videos. There were a few points in there that I personally felt like noting down and realised it'd make a decent video and a wider discussion of this interview. I must start by saying that this is by no means the full interview. I trimmed down maybe like 5 minutes of Seth speaking out of an entire 40-minute video, so if you haven't seen it already, I will be leaving it as the top link in the description because, of course, this isn't my interview and I'm just putting it onto my forum because I love this kind of talk about Clash Royale. But yeah boys, without further ado, let's get into it.
We have a rework for Barbarian Hut that's really good. Like, if we released it, Barbarian Hut would be way better. But one thing that we saw was that it was really dragging the games out to draws a lot. It's a more powerful Barb Hut may not necessarily be something that was good for the metagame overall.
Alrighty, so this is something I want to start with because it ties into my next point very well. Recently I did a tier list video on my most toxic cards in Clash Royale. Barbarian Hut was upon that list and I'm pretty certain it didn't score the bottom of that list, so it was sort of high up. And this was because, as Seth said, it's not necessarily a card that is good for the metagame overall. It's defensive, leads to longer games and even draws, and is very simplistic to play. Another card that shares some of those toxic traits is Witch.
Witch is this weird, very binary card. She's not overall strong. If you look at her win rates, it's not like she's winning even 50% of the games that she's used in challenges. And even on the ladder, she doesn't have like the greatest win rate. But she's such a hit or miss card. If they don't have Poison, if they don't have Valkyrie, if they don't have Mega Knight or Wizard or what have you, you can kind of ride her to a free win because she doesn't die easily to spells. She spawns so many skeletons that things like Mini P.E.K.K.A. can't really ever get to her. What we wanted to do was make her just not frustrating, because once she doesn't feel so binary, once it doesn't feel like you're just getting free wins out of her or she's completely worthless, then you can actually balance her on a fair level. When we were looking for how does Witch fit into the metagame, she doesn't really fit into any tournament or challenge decks, largely because she doesn't specialize in any one thing. She doesn't like fit any role that a deck would want other than just spawning a bunch of skeletons. And what we noticed was Musketeer was incredibly popular in a wide variety of archetypes, and there's not really that many cards that compete with Musketeer.
Okay, so there's a lot to actually break down there. Seth describes the Witch as a binary card, one that gives free wins when your opponent doesn't have things like Poison or Mega Knight, but gives you free losses when they do have those counters. I've said this time and time again in videos, and Seth just said it in this interview, but she is extremely annoying because she doesn't die to spells and will keep spawning those skeletons to stop melee units from approaching her and attacking her. The natural counter to ranged units are melee units, and oftentimes spells as well. So when a ranged unit stops that counterplay, it becomes incredibly annoying and feels very binary in the way they function. With this rework, they tried to make her more like the traditional ranged unit, and Musketeer is referenced here, which is now more well-rounded, doesn't rely on being a toxic spell-resistant skelly spawner, and such will fit into more decks and be countered by what everybody knows should counter ranged units, which are melee units and spells.
You know what? What's the point of Wallbreakers? The point was to enable hyper-fast cycle decks. We wanted Wallbreakers as a card to kind of be like Goblin Barrel, where the whole deck centers around cycling it very quickly to put your opponents on balance. It doesn't feel broken because even though they cost 2, you can overpay. You can pay, you know, for Lumberjack or Knight or Musketeer or whatever, and they'll kill the Wallbreakers and then still counterattack with full health. So I do think there's still going to be quite a bit of counterplay to it, but they are going to be dramatically better.
I just want to give a real quick note to Wallbreakers here, and I want to comment on what I said in my balance change review. They spoke about Wallbreakers as a punish card, not necessarily this cheap cycle win condition card. And so in that balance change review, I said I would have preferred them to be 4 Elixir to fill this punish role. I stand by that 4 Elixir makes them a better punish, but seeing this new perspective on them, 2 Elixir definitely fits this slot better. It's a very nice change, and it'll be interesting to see if this archetype of spamming Wallbreakers, defending, cycling, and repeating will actually take off. Personally, I can't see it happening unless Wallbreakers do insane damage per Elixir, but we will have to see. They are certainly a fun card overall.
Now when it comes to Wizard, kind of same deal. Like, you need a ranged splash attacker. He does a lot of damage in a big splash radius. He's very straightforward and easy to use, and I think for a lot of people who aren't sure how to get the most out of the higher skill cap cards, they're just always going to rely on Wizard. Now, one of the challenges is that when these cards are weak, like Wizard is, then you tend to only see them over-leveled on the ladder. If it was a balanced card, you wouldn't see over-leveled ones on the ladder. You would see ones at the appropriate level range, like everything else. Now, we will eventually buff him. I have buffed Wizard since joining the team in the past, so it's not something that we won't ever do, but it's something we got to handle carefully. People generally feel use rates more than they feel win rates. They don't really know if a card is 50% win rate or 55% win rate. That's like a little hard for an individual to perceive.
It's
but
true.
you can feel a use rate. If Wizard is in 1/3 of the ladder games, then like you see it all the time, and you really don't want it to get buffed.
The Wizard problem is one that I haven't actually delved too much into on this channel, but I wanted to use this as an opportunity to discuss it a little bit. The problem is that he's too simple, in a way. He's very, very easy to use. You put him down within range and he'll just splash away. It's a card designed for lower skill cap players, which hurts him a lot. These players enjoy him because he never feels like he's letting the player down, and such they'll overlevel him. This causes him to be powerful on ladder, even though he's a weak card overall. People feel his high usage more than his high-ish success rate, like Seth said, because you can easily measure how much you see a wizard, but not necessarily how much you win or lose to a wizard. So when people see Wizard in like 40% of their games, they are very likely to take him into their own deck and overlevel him once more. He needs to be higher skill capped, maybe lower elixir and lower damage or something, but I'm sure Seth has that one on lock.
We try to take a pretty long-term view on this. We assume that every player will eventually hit a max deck. And so the idea is that even if Wizard is very popular in certain trophy ranges, those players will eventually max their deck out and then realize that Wizard is maybe holding them back, and then swap it out for a better card at that point.
Right, there's a little bit to unpack here. This is a very, very horrible viewpoint to have within this game. If you look at my account, I've played since March 2016, and I would say I've played on at least 1,000 of those days since, if not a lot more. I have 10 max cards. Yes, that is enough to make a max deck, but my options are Poison, God Barrel, Ice Golem, Ice Spirit, Knight, Gob Gang, Archers, Tesla, Elite Barbarians, and Royal Giant. Maybe if you swap Elite Barbs for another common, because I only upgraded those for a meme, then I could have a viable max deck, but probably not really. The cards I have, I didn't really choose to upgrade. They sort of just fell to me to upgrade, just because of how chests are random, and yeah, I have requests and stuff, but apart from that, I can't really choose 8 cards that I want to max that easily, even though I've played for 1,000 days in this game. And such, assuming that players will reach their perfect max deck before they quit is extremely far-fetched. I doubt that most players will join the game and play for 3 years without getting bored of the daily ladder grind that gets them almost nowhere. Assuming that people will just swap out Wizard after 3 years of using it is pretty harmful for the game. And that assumption says that they have their perfect max deck after 3 years of playing, which, as we've just discussed, I don't. Even if they got their perfect max deck after 3 years and they played the game for like 5 years in total, they would still use that trash Wizard for 60% of their life in the game. I think this answer was either a cop-out or wildly misinformed, and I just hope it doesn't affect the balancing of Wizard and other ladder cards in future.
So we had this idea of a card that split into 2, which then split into 2 again, and then giving the elixir back to the opponent was sort of the aha moment, as opposed to like, should we just make another 7-cost golem? We're like, wait a second, why don't we make this character cost less and then give your opponent elixir? I think he's gonna be very strong. I think we learned our lesson from Wallbreakers. Like I said earlier, we want to make sure these cards are coming out a little bit more on the aggressive side, because even if he's a little on the strong side, he doesn't defend himself. I think the 3 archetypes that are going to benefit the most are Graveyard, because it's so much stronger than Ice Golem. Balloon as well, because Giant Balloon is obviously hard to stop, but Giant Balloon uses up all your elixir. With Elixir Golem and Balloon, you still have a little bit of elixir left to cast anything from a zap to a fireball. And last, but certainly not least, is 3 Musketeers. So 3 Musketeers actually have still a pretty decent win rate. They obviously have a very low use rate in challenges. They're not nearly as popular as they used to be, but their win rate is still pretty strong. I think what that deck needs is just more synergistic cards. I really think the decks that are going to want Elixir Golem are ones that need to punish their opponent when their opponent is low on elixirs.
I'll start with like a side point on Elixir Golem here. Why on earth is he a rare? The normal Golem is an epic. They have very similar stats. The normal Golem gives you a death damage, but the Elixir Golem gives your opponent elixir. Along with that, in the arena that Elixir Golem is in, Executioner is an epic. Elixir Golem is a little bit more complex than Executioner, and Seth just said obviously it's done on arena and complexity. Well, they're in the same arena, and one's a little bit more complex than the other, so I don't really get that. In my opinion, the rarities of Golem and Elixir Golem should be swapped, and I was sort of surprised to see that the Elixir Boy was only a rare card. Anyway, into what Seth has just said about the card itself. He claimed that Elixir Golem is going to be strong, due to the failure of stuff like Wallbreakers. I wouldn't be surprised if they have emergency nerfs ready, just in case his admitted strength is a little bit too strong. Seth claims that Graveyard, Balloon, and Three Musketeers are going to be improved by Elixir Golem, which makes me think that he's a one-push wonder sort of card. You play him and have to take down that tower, otherwise you're going to have some hardcore defending to do. He's going to be a very good punish when paired with Balloon or Graveyard, so playing an investment against him is going to be insanely difficult. If you get into overtime against an Elixir Golem and you have to invest, I think it's all over for you. He seems perfect to base race with. Your opponent can't claim that 4 elixir back if the game ends before the Elixir Golem dies, and utilizing that could be insane. I think it'll be a high skill cap card with high risk and high reward.
I agree that complexity is usually tied to rarity, but we've also begun to think of that as a sliding scale with arena. So for example, a common in Spooky Town can be more complicated than a common in Training Camp. In terms of the cards that already exist, there are definitely some cards that I wish we could go back and change the rarity of. Like, I wish Mega Minion could be a common. I can't think of a card that would be better suited just to be a common than Mega Minion.
Alright, so just a small note about rarities here. Rarity does not equal complexity directly, but it does when you factor in arenas. And I think I referenced this in a point earlier about Elixir Golem, and I didn't really preface this part, but now you understand what I meant there. It's an interesting change Supercell have made, but I guess it makes sense. My question about Elixir Golem still stands. Why is he a rare? He unlocks with the Epic Executioner, but feels more complex than him. He unlocks after the Epic Golem, and feels more complex than him too. I guess it's not a big deal, I just don't understand how rarities are decided really. Anyway, my main point was about when Seth said that he wishes Mega Minion was a common, along with some other card changes. I still don't know why they're afraid to mix up card rarity when they clearly want to, and it would help solve a few major issues within the game. I know it'll mess up the economy of a few cards for a while, but do you remember that Seth said they look at things assuming every player will max decks? I think if you truly look that long term, then rarity changes are completely viable, especially if they are all done at once instead of targeting just 1 or 2 cards at a time.
We have a amazing rework to heal that we all really like on the team, but
You're going to change it into a paladin.
Yeah, no, but it needs a lot more work than what we currently have. Like, we can make it work in numbers, but it doesn't look right. So we need a lot more, like, you know, graphical work and stuff like that to get that thing ready for release.
Heal was also a card on my toxic list. Bring it back, boys. Maybe they're listening, not necessarily to this tiny irrelevant channel, but to the community in general who express the need for these types of reworks. That is where I'd like to leave this video for today, on the positive note that they might be listening to small things such as Witch, Barb Hut, and Heal reworks. I'd just like to remind you that the full interview covers a lot more topics than this, and if you somehow haven't seen it already, then it will be the top link down below. I'd like to give a thank you to Ash and Seth for this content. It's some of my favourite stuff on YouTube, hence why I'm reacting to it on my forum here. Even if I responded negative to 1 or 2 parts of the interview, overall it's a very positive thing that happened and it gave us insight into the game. So yeah boys, if you'd like to leave a comment about any of the topics discussed today, I will be responding to them all as usual. But yeah boys, I hope you enjoyed this different type of video today. Thank you all for watching, and peace.